Well, hello everyone, I'm back for another update here. Today is Thursday, getting into the latter part of October 17th, 2024. Here's that the hurricane season is starting to wind down. No named disturbances right now. And I'm saying that it's a good possibility the season is just about over. Due to all the storms we've had, taking a lot of heat out of that ocean in many different areas in the last few weeks. And we're rapidly going into a more autumn-like or even winter-like pattern. In many areas of the northern hemisphere, flipped from being warm to cold here. And again, as I said earlier, some of the mountains in West Virginia did get some snow. Going over this blowdown here. And I also got my full backpack on as I'm testing it out because I'm hoping to do a through hike in the near future. I'm thinking about the Allegheny Trails if I can get away from here for several weeks to do it. And let's see if I can. So is this cold pattern going to continue? There's going to be a warm up next week. MJO is kind of in a state of flux right now. Trying to go into phase 4. 6 and 7 and all at once seems 3. Still in kind of phase 3 zone as well. It does appear they're trying to fire up for phase 4. From looking at the images, it appears they're trying to manipulate the MJO to go into 4 in the next couple of weeks, but we shall see. There's other areas that are firing up as well. As you can see, there's some blowdowns here in the storm. It does appear likely that things are trending toward continued cold weather pattern at least into November overall for the eastern U.S. Will it continue into the winter? It depends on how successful they are at manipulating the MJO into the warmer phases. I know some people believe that everything is entirely natural, including what happened with Helene, with the devastation that that storm caused in North Carolina especially. That has not happened anything even close since 1916, as I stated before, and probably thousands of people potentially have lost their lives. They're not publicizing it, but I lived there for several years in the past, so I know, and I've traveled through many of the areas for work that were hard hit, including Mitchell County, Yancey, all those counties that got hard hit. I traveled through them. I'm familiar with those areas. So yeah, it's conceivable that this devastation could have killed thousands of people. Given the topography of the area, how most of the roads follow rivers and streams closely in steep, narrow valleys, but many of the towns are located near rivers, many of the houses. So yeah, it is quite conceivable. Many people in the thousands could have been killed, and will never be found, many of them, because they're buried in rubble or mud. But getting back to what the rest of the season, it appears fall is going to continue on the chilly side for at least until the end of November. And the big question is, will the cold continue into December, perhaps January, or will it flip, as it has in recent years, to a mild pattern around December 1st? Or milder. How much of our weather is natural? How much of it is manipulated? I don't believe man can totally manipulate the weather, never will, but they can, again, enhance storms to become destructive that perhaps may not have been without interference. Like, mankind would not be capable of producing Helene out of nothing, a storm like that. They are capable of taking a storm and might have been bad and making it 10 times worse, though. What are they using for technology? They are using technology. Weather modification has been around for many decades. And again, I feel there is an element of that going on, but I do not believe that HAARP would be able to steer a hurricane or make it. They're using much more intensive technology than HAARP. Likely, very likely from satellites to interfere with the weather, try to modify it. But can mankind produce a storm? Can they totally steer a storm toward a locale? They can try to manipulate the convection to try to get a storm to move in a certain direction. But I don't believe man can totally steer a storm, because otherwise, or produce a storm totally, because otherwise every storm come off Africa would turn into a Cat 5 and hit somebody. And what shows me that man isn't capable of it is we had a lull in the hurricane season that lasted 5 to 6 weeks from Beryl till, or more than that actually, a couple months from Beryl. It went dead until the middle of September. if man was totally able to manipulate the weather, completely be able to manipulate it, we would have had the 30 named storms this year. They would have hit everywhere. So man is not totally capable of manipulating the weather. They can, though, nudge it enough to make a difference in where the jet stream perhaps goes, or how bad a storm really is. And it looks like this dog just finally rested enough to continue on ahead of me here. But how about solar cycle 25? What is going to happen with that? Well, again, I see an overall decline starting to occur. We did recently have these aurora displays, solar storms, D5 a week ago. In August, the sunspot count for the first time in a long time went over 200. But now it's dropped back, and to the point where NASA has actually declared we are in the max now, officially, of the cycle. But again, what I found remarkable about my chart is for the first time since the early 1800s, we have had 2 consecutive solar cycles where it took over 30 months for the sunspot count to go over 100. That has not happened in 2 consecutive months since the Dalton minimum back in the early 1800s. And also during the 20th century, we had, I think it was 6 or 7 consecutive cycles that were shorter than the 11-year average. And that's very telling as well, because a shorter cycle usually has a warming effect on the planet, because we're getting the maxes more frequently, and that's what replenishes the heat in the oceans, warms the planet up in the long term. You get 6 consecutive cycles that are shorter than average. However, again, starting with 23 was the only cycle that had a longer than average duration of longer than the 11 years so far in the last 100 years. The only cycle that went longer was 23. Even 24 was 1 month short of the 11-year average. It remains to be seen what 25 is going to do. So in the past 100 years, we have only had 1 solar cycle that went beyond the 11-year average, and that was, again, cycle 23. That led to the extended minimum of 2008, 2009. Because we went 2 extra years with reduced solar activity out of that cycle, which in the long term has a cooling effect, or reversing the warming effect on the planet, at least to reverse it. But the fact that for the first time since the early 1800s, we've had 2 consecutive cycles that did not have a quick ramp up seems to suggest that we're going into a long-term decline in solar activity. And that maybe August might be the only month of this cycle where the number goes above 200. Because right now, lately, we've been back down around 150. Which pretty much for 23 was the 23 max, or 24 maxed out just below 150 sunspots. And you take out August, where we got over 200, pretty much it's not really much stronger than 24 was, other than the 1 month so far. There are many people saying that the max is going to continue for another year, maybe even 2 years. There's going to be another peak. I don't think so. Reason being, the reason for the secondary peak is when the hemispheres of the sun are out of sync, where the northern hemisphere peaks out 2 years before the southern does. So you get a double peak because the hemispheres of the sun aren't in sync. With this cycle, both hemispheres are within 6 months of each other. And you can't base your forecast on what happened in the last cycle anyway, because every cycle is different. Every cycle is like a fingerprint. There are no two that are exactly alike. And being that the northern hemisphere again of the sun is already quieting down, unless it gets active again, this could be the beginning of the end of this max. Because the southern hemisphere, as I've been saying, is a good possibility it's going to follow suit in about 6 more months. So I'm again trying out this backpack. I got my sleeping bag attached to it, I got a tent, and I've got an air mattress on it as well, along with a little camping stove packed away, a few other items. I don't have everything in there I will need for through hike, but I got probably at least 3/4 in there as to what I'm going to take with me. But I'm probably going to start out with an overnight, because you are allowed to camp at the Raptor Observatory. I might head up there. The weather is supposed to be rain-free for at least another week here. The nights are going to be cool, but the days are supposed to get a little warmer. Up around 70, nights still getting down around 40. So I got a heavier sleeping bag on my pack so that I don't get freezing cold. Today's going to be it for this video. I'll be back soon. Another update.